southern Israel.
All right. All right. Could we try to police and make sure people's mics are muted? Please, will you mind muting your
I think you accidentally muted all, so Dr. Dieter is also muted.
Okay, I just unmuted. Is that good? Okay. Thank you. My name is Dr. Dieter. Today's show is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to present for 30 minutes and then I'm going to have to leave. I'm actually abroad right now and I have a function at the top of the hour that I need to be at. So after presenting, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to stay back for questions, but Dr. Kenny is going to be able to help us answer some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Can everyone see Dr. Dieter? I'm sorry, Dr. Dieter. I'm not.
Yeah.
You spotlighted? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then we will get on with the show. Okay. Let's see. All right. So my name is Dr. Dieter. These are my board certifications. I'm an internist as well as a pediatrician by trade. And today I'm going to be talking to you guys about, metabolic diseases. That we now have strong convincing evidence that most of the chronic medical conditions that we face today as a result of something we call metabolic dysfunction. And that metabolic dysfunction stems from two things: insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction. Those two things result in metabolic dysfunction. Metabolic dysfunction is simply a fancy medical term to say energy shortage, energy deficiencies. So these metabolic dysfunction, energy shortages result in all the chronic medical conditions that we face today. All these chronic medical conditions that we face today come from energy shortages, metabolic dysfunction. There's now convincing evidence that that's what all the chronic medical conditions we deal with. I want to do this. I want to isolate insulin resistance and isolate microbiome dysfunction and talk about how these two things result in energy shortages, metabolic dysfunction, which then lead to chronic diseases. To be able to talk about insulin resistance first, it's important to understand what insulin does. So to be able to understand insulin resistance, let's talk about the job of insulin. The job of insulin is to do this, is to mobilize glucose out of the blood into the cell. So I consider insulin to be a very, very critical hormone in our existence. Insulin sits at the pinnacle. It's like the CEO of the company, the CEO of the body that dictates structure and functioning. And why? Because it has an important job, and its job is to do this. Insulin helps to mobilize glucose out of the blood into the cell, right into the cell. Okay, so when we eat, the end product of what we eat is glucose that is secreted into the blood. Insulin's job is to cause that glucose to enter the cell. When glucose enters the cell by the command of insulin, glucose is now shunted in the mitochondria. In the mitochondria, glucose then goes through a complex series of reactions called the electron transport chain, with the end result being the release of an energy molecule called ATP. Think of ATP as the energy currency of the cell. So that's the job of insulin. So without insulin, we cannot make energy. So insulin sits at the pinnacle because it helps us make energy. And every cell in the body, every function in the body requires energy. And we have to pay for that with ATP. So now, understanding what insulin does, what then is insulin resistance? Insulin resistance is when there is a breakdown in this process, breakdown. So anywhere where any breakdown in the process of any breakdown in the process of insulin mobilizing glucose out of the cell out of the blood into the cell. Anywhere in this process, where this something happens is called insulin resistance. So if for some reason glucose cannot enter the cell by the command of insulin, we say you have insulin resistance. So insulin resistance breakdown occurs in two phases. It's important to understand these two phases. I'm going to camp out here for a little bit to understand that, because when you understand that, when I start talking about the solution, you will understand the solution because you know how the problem occurred. If your car breaks down and you take your car to the mechanic, before the mechanic figure out why the car broke down, the mechanic needs to run a diagnostic to understand, okay, this is what caused the car to break down. So we've explained that insulin resistance is a breakdown in the process of insulin mobilizing glucose out of the blood into the cell, and the breakdown is insulin resistance. How does the breakdown in insulin resistance occur? It occurs by two processes. The first is what we call too much fat, okay? And then the first then leads to the second process, what we call too much insulin. Now, too much fat is good, but too much fat is not good. Insulin is good, but too much insulin is not good. You may have heard of it being said, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Well, let me explain to you how too much fat and too much insulin becomes a bad thing and plays a role in how there is a breakdown in insulin resistance. You see, this is how a cell is normally supposed to look like. And when we consume way more calories than we're supposed to, what happens is that the body takes those excess calories and converts them into fat. And then the body takes those excess calories and goes and stores those excess calories in the cell. A cell is normally supposed to look like that. But when we consume more calories than we're supposed to, let me make a replica of this cell, and the excess calories that we consume always get converted into fat. Any excess calories gets converted into fat. The body takes that fat now and lumps it into this cell. Okay, and that's not a good thing because the fat now occupies space in the cell where glucose should normally go in. So when you have insulin normally and there is glucose in the blood, in the space of cell number 1, the cell is empty here. It has space in it. When glucose is in the blood, the cell commands, the insulin commands the cell to say, I want you to take up glucose. It says, yes, sir, it takes it up. You now have a situation where you consume way more calories than you're supposed to. Those calories have been converted into excess fat. That excess fat has now been stored in the cell. When insulin comes to the door of this cell and knocks on the door of this cell, knock, 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 cell, I got glucose in the blood. I want you to take it up. The cell tells insulin, I'm sorry, I have no room in the inn. Where do you want me to put it? I'm filled with fat. The cell is fat-laden, pregnant with fat. So the cell refuses to take it in. And this cell is acting like somebody on Thanksgiving that has eaten too much and is sick with full, like it's so Thanksgiving full and doesn't want to eat anything. If you've ever felt, that full on Thanksgiving, the last thing in the world that you're thinking about doing is bringing in another bite of anything, even if that other bite of anything is the best taste of turkey in the world or the best sweet potato, whatever you in the world, you don't want it. You don't want to bring in anything else. That's how this cell that is stuffed with fat is feeling. It doesn't want to bring in glucose because it's stuffed with fat. That's the first way in which you develop insulin resistance. Glucose doesn't enter the cell. When glucose doesn't enter the cell, it cannot go through the electron transport chain to make ATP. You have a breakdown in insulin resistance. Now, there is a one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin concentration. When glucose is high, the pancreas is going to produce a commensurate high amount of insulin to match that glucose. So you now have this situation where you have this cell, which is stuffed and has refused to take up glucose from the blood. The cell has refused to take up glucose from the blood. And then what happens, because the cell has refused to take up glucose from the blood, let me just try to make some space here. Glucose begins to accumulate in the blood. As the cell is stuffed, it tells insulin, I'm sorry, I have no room in the inn. Where do you want me to put it? Glucose now begins to accumulate in the blood like this. As glucose accumulates in the blood, that high glucose that that glucose that accumulates in the blood now triggers the pancreas to produce too much insulin. And too much insulin is no bueno. Too much insulin, as important as insulin is, the pinnacle sits at the as important as insulin is, the pinnacle sits at the top of the, of the company, dictating structure and functioning in the body. When insulin now becomes too much, it's a problem. And I like to address the issue of high insulin like this. Think about the CEO of a company. He's level-headed. He's supposed to dictate structure and functioning of the company. And one day, that CEO of the company comes to work and he has gone off. He's gone cuckoo. He is backing out orders he's backing out orders to people, shoving people left and right, saying you're going to do it my way or the highway, giving unreasonable deadlines or what have you. That kind of attitude by the boss, being tyrannical to the people, the subordinates under him, the employees of that boss are gonna lose respect for the boss. When the employees of the boss lose respect for the boss, it makes it harder for the employees to do what the boss asks them to do. It's the same with the cell. When insulin is running high, insulin becomes a bully, a tyrant to the cell, commanding the cell, yelling at the cell, being unreasonable to the cell, and the cell loses its respect for that kind of tone. And it says, well, you want to come at me with that kind of tone? This is what I'll do. I'm not going to respect you. And when the cell doesn't respect insulin, the cell wouldn't do what insulin commands it to do. And the number one thing that insulin commands the cell to do is to say, hey, cell, open your doors so that I can send in insulin, or open your doors so that I can send in glucose to receive glucose. So when the cell loses its respect for insulin because insulin has become too high, it's tyrannical, it's a bully, the cell closes its doors to insulin. And when the cell closes its doors to insulin, what happens is that less glucose enters the cell and more glucose accumulates in the blood. That more glucose that accumulates in the blood is another trigger, for the pancreas. It's another trigger for the pancreas to produce even more insulin, even more. As if the boss, or the CEO had not been cuckoo enough. He raises his cuckoo game from this level to this level. As if he was not crazy enough here, he becomes even crazier here. That's even more insulin. The employees lose even more respect for the CEO, and, shy away from doing what the CEO asks. If I lose respect for my boss and he comes to me, hey, Dieter, listen, we got this project that we need to turn in the next 90 days. Can you get it to me? If I usually perform on my A game because I've lost respect for that boss, I may perform on my C game. I may get that project at 90 days, but I give him a C plus grade. I'll give him a C plus work rather than A game. That's what the cell does. The cell, its lack of respect for insulin, has little or no incentive to be able to do what insulin asks it to do, or does a lousy job, and more glucose accumulates in the cell. So it's a constant cycle. One-to-one relationship, glucose is accumulating in the cell because insulin is too much. That too much insulin, is causing the cell to close its doors even more. The closing of its doors even more is causing a further rise in glucose. One-to-one relationship triggering even more insulin. That's the breakdown in insulin resistance in two steps. Too much fat was the first, and too much insulin is the second step. That's how you have the insulin resistance. And now, when you have insulin resistance, it causes you to have all of these chronic problems. Remember, insulin helps you to be able to make energy. When you cannot make energy, the cells cannot function. What is the simple definition of a disease? A cell that has malfunctioned. Why does a cell malfunction? Because it doesn't have the energy it needs to function. All cells require energy to function. So when you have insulin resistance, you have a slew of these diseases. And unfortunately, I cannot find a slide big enough to be able to enumerate all the diseases that exist in modern day society that's a result of energy deficiency for insulin. So this slide is just a depiction of the little few diseases to make a point that insulin resistance results in energy deficiencies that then result in disease states. Now, The other thing we'll talk about is dysbiosis. To be able to understand what dysbiosis is, I want to first go and talk to you guys about this slide. This is what we call This is what we call the microbiome. The microbiome is a microbial population of 30 to 100 trillion bacteria that live in the gut. Okay, that's a microbiome. 30 to 100 trillion bacteria that live in the gut, and they have multiple functions. They help in the digestion of fiber. They help to protect the gut from disease-causing bacteria. And the way they protect the gut from disease-causing bacteria, they produce a very special molecule called short-chain fatty acids. The short-chain fatty acids are like security guards and go and beef up the strength of the gut. The cells of the gut are lined together like this, one to the other. You look at my knuckle, where my knuckle meets my knuckle. Think about that area where my knuckle meets my knuckle as something called tight junctions. The cells of the gut are bind together by tight junctions. These short chain fatty acids go and make those tight junctions tight. If those tight junctions are tight, you cannot have an opening in the gut. And then when you have an opening in the gut, bacteria seeps out of the gut into the blood and causes infection. So the microbiome, by producing the short chain fatty acids, beefs up security, make sure the tight junction stays tight so that pathogens do not seep out of the colon into the blood to cause infections. Those short chain fatty acids cannot be gotten from anywhere else. They can only be made by the gut. The microbiome also helps to regulate the immune system. You may not know it, but 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut. That is 70. The other 30% resides in the bone marrow, the lymph nodes, the lymphatic. The microbiome, this 30 to 100 trillion microorganisms, train the immune system to react in the normal way. When the microbiome is healthy, it gives the immune system a healthy training. A healthy training looks like this. Hey, you see that bacteria? He's a bad dude. Take him out with this bullet. Hey, you see that other guy there? He looks like a bacteria, but he's in camo. He's not a bacteria. He's one of our cells, or he's a cell of the thyroid gland. Don't attack him, leave him alone. That's a healthy training, to the immune system. When the microbiome is unhealthy, it trains the immune system in an unhealthy way. And the unhealthy way causes the immune system to be trigger happy, to have its finger on the trigger, just ready to shoot. It trains the immune system like this. Shoot first, ask questions later. This is how it will look like. Hey, you see that bacteria there? He's a bad dude. Blow his head off. Hey, you see that other guy there that looks like he's in camo? He may look like he looks like he's in camo. He may look like a bacteria. Just blow his head off. We're going to do an autopsy later and try to figure it out. So it causes the microbiome now to train the immune system to attack the body cells. So that guy who was in camo could be a thyroid cell. That guy who was in camo could be a cell in the intestine. And now the microbiome has given a command to the immune system to attack it. That's where you have autoimmune diseases. So that's one way that the microbiome regulates the immune system in either a positive or negative way. The other thing is that the microbiome helps in the synthesis of vitamins, vitamin B and vitamin K. Now, when microbiome is working, functioning, all of this is working properly, all of these functions are preserved. When the microbiome is not functioning well, these functions become compromised. And it goes to my definition of what the microbiome is. What then is microbiome dysfunction or dysbiosis? In the gut, there are bad bacteria and good bacteria. They live in equilibrium with each other, 50-50%. So the good bacteria keep the bad in check, the bad keep the good in check, 50-50%. Dysbiosis or microbiome dysfunction is a scenario where the bad bacteria proliferate, increase in number, and the good bacteria go down. That imbalance in the microbial population, is called dysbiosis or microbiome dysfunction. The number one reason why that happens is a food shortage. Now, the food for the microbiome is fiber. We mentioned in this slide, they help to digest. We mentioned in this slide, right at the top right here, they help to digest fiber. When you do when you do not have enough fiber, there's a shortage of food. When there's a shortage of food, what happens is it sets into motion survival of the fetus. So the stronger bacteria hoard the small food that is there. And to keep a hold on that food, they now proliferate to keep a grab on that food. The stronger bacteria, the bad bacteria, hoard the small fiber that's there, proliferate to keep a hold on that food. It causes an imbalance in good and bad bacteria, and you have dysbiosis. We do not consume enough fiber in today's day and age. And because we do not consume enough fiber in today's day and age, we have dysbiosis, which results in these diseases. If you are a man, it's recommended that the normal amount of fiber a man should consume daily should be at least 38 grams of fiber. If you are a woman, it's recommended that the amount of fiber you should consume should be about 25 grams of fiber. In the US, the NIH estimates that the average man and woman is consuming 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day. And fiber is very important in the health of the microbiome. So when you have dysbiosis, you're going to have a slew of all of these diseases: lupus, autoimmune disease, hypertrigger immune system. It has seen the guy in Carmel, it blows his head off and decides to do an autopsy later. It shoots first, asks questions later. Hashimoto, an autoimmune disease as a result of microbiome dysfunction. MS, an autoimmune disease. A lot of these diseases, come as a result of a dysfunction of the microbiome. And you may be surprised to see anxiety and depression on here. Anxiety and depression, and most of it stems from the microbiome. You may not know it, but 90% of the body's serotonin, 90% of the hormone serotonin that helps to maintain mood is produced in the gut. 90. The other 10% is produced in the central nervous system, in the brain. So when the gut is unhealthy and the gut cannot produce, the factory cannot put out its product, no doubt there's anxiety and depression. So all of these things are connected. And then I'll go back and say that if I gave you a time machine to go back 100 years in the past and look at our ancestors, they're not going to have these diseases because they ate a lot of fiber. Their foods were not processed. I gave you a time machine to go back 100 years. This slide is not going to exist. This slide will not exist 100 years to our ancestors, because, the insulin resistance issue, which is driven by overnutrition, did not exist. So those two things. Now, this slide, I call this slide the metabolic sequence of disease or metabolic sequence of inflammation. When you have insulin resistance causes you to have energy deficiency, metabolic dysfunction, which then results in oxidative stress and injury to the cell. Every time a cell is injured, it's going to cry out to the immune system. When the immune system hears a cry, it always goes to the cell with an inflammatory response. The immune system comes to the cell and is trying to take care of the problem. But what is seen in the cell is it's seeing smoke, and really the problem is a fire 2 houses away. So the immune system is not really able to solve this problem because it's seeing smoke. The core of the problem is insulin resistance, the root cause of the problem, 2 houses away. So the problem continues, and when the problem persists, the cell continues to send help me to the to the immune system. The immune system continues to deploy inflammation, chronic inflammation, which results in diseases and symptoms, and that right there, 2 things that are in this metabolic sequence of disease: insulin resistance and microbiome dysfunction. Those 2 things right at the peak of that. Now, there's good news because we now have convincing scientific evidence that if you were to reverse the energy deficiencies that came as a result of insulin resistance and came as a result of dysbiosis, you reverse the disease condition. I put it this way: if I had a car and I was driving on the road and that car stopped and I ran out of gas, that car is going to stop. It stops because the energy source of the car has now gone. The car hasn't stopped because of intrinsic failure of the engine. No, it doesn't have energy anymore. I go to a gas station, I buy a gallon of gas, I walk back to my car on the side of the road and I put gas in that car. When I put gas in that car and I sit in the driver's seat and I turn on the ignition, I'm gonna hear the beautiful sound. Why? Because it now has juice. It now has energy again. Its engine did not fail in the first place. Its engine just lacked energy. It is so simple but so profound. And that's the reason why our ancestors 100 years ago did not have these diseases, because the lives they lived secured energy. They did not have energy imbalances. But when we resolve the energy imbalances, your diabetes goes poof, gone. Your high blood pressure goes poof, gone. Your high cholesterol goes poof, gone. Your Hashimoto thyroiditis goes poof, gone. And that should be good news. That should be good news to us. And there is a solution. A solution I present to you is a system called the Feel Great system. The Feel Great system is a wonderful solution that helps to go to the core of the problem. You resolve a problem at its core. Insulin resistance and dysbiosis are causing these issues. If we can resolve the insulin resistance and dysbiosis that cause the energy shortage, then the problem goes away. And what's a Feel Great system? It is a nutraceutical product made up of two things, the Unimate and the Balance. When we talk about a nutraceutical product, right? What a nutraceutical product is it is a product that is made 100% from plants and has nutritional benefits, but has more health benefits than it has nutritional benefits. So we call it a nutraceutical. Now, these two products help in reversing insulin resistance and dysbiosis, and I'll show you how. The Unimate is made, the first product is made from a plant that is native to Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, the South Americas. It's rich, the name of the plant is called the yerba mate plant. And this plant is rich in a special phytonutrient, a polyphenol called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid has a very special property. The property of chlorogenic acid is to cause, so chlorogenic acid, which is found in the Unimate, the property of it is to cause fat burning. It helps to burn fat. Okay. Now remember how we developed insulin resistance? You have a cell that was fat laden, that could not take up glucose because it was filled with fat. And then glucose now accumulated in the blood. And because glucose accumulated in the blood, it resulted in the second stage of too much insulin. And too much insulin was now acting as a tyrant to the cell, making the insulin process, the accumulation of glucose even worse. That's how you had the insulin resistance. Now, what happens when you consume the yerba mate? Because it is rich in chlorogenic acid that causes fat breakdown, lipolysis. It goes to this cell that is pregnant with fat and causes this cell, in the process of fat burning, when you burn fat, in the process of fat burning, it goes to this cell and causes this cell to now look like this. It burns the fat in this cell. Now this cell is now free. It's now free to now take up all the glucose in the blood that was accumulating. When glucose enters the cell from the blood, the concentration of insulin that was too much, so number one, it reverses the first step of insulin resistance by just freeing the cell to look now back to normal like this. So glucose enters. The second step of insulin resistance, which was too much insulin because of the one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin production. Now that glucose concentration falls because glucose is entering the cell, the pancreas no longer sees a reason to produce too much insulin. So the pancreas now goes from too much insulin to producing low insulin. When the pancreas now goes to producing low insulin is like that CEO that had come to work and had become cuckoo, crazy, tyrannical, bullish. He now goes to his employees and say, hey guys, I've been a jerk for the last 1 to 2 months. I'm really sorry. Can you guys forgive me? When the employees of the boss hear a humble predisposition like this, the Those employees who had previously lost their respect for the boss because the boss had become tyrannical, too much insulin, that apology causes them to gain the respect of the boss again. The boss can now tell them, hey, I have this project done in 3 months, and they'll give the boss their type A, they'll give the boss their A game. Same with the cell. When insulin now becomes low, insulin has become humble. Insulin comes to the cell and say, I'm sorry, I was pushing you around. Please forgive me. The cell is very forgiving. It says, you know what? I can work with that humble insulin. And when the cell now works with the humble insulin, it opens its doors for more glucose to come in. When glucose comes into the cell, glucose can go through the electron transport chain so that energy can be produced, restoring the energy shortage that resulted in these problems. So that's how the Unamate, just by that process, helps in reversing insulin resistance. Fiber does the same thing. Fiber does exactly the same picture. It helps in fat burning and reverses insulin resistance. But the other thing that fiber does is that fiber helps to decrease your glycemic profile, meaning that fiber causes your blood sugar levels not to be high. And because there's a one-to-one relationship between glucose concentration and insulin, if your blood sugar concentrations are not high, you're not going to produce too much insulin. I put it this way. Let's say you and I went to a restaurant to eat lasagna, right? And you know nothing about fiber. I know something about fiber. This product here, the balance is just fiber. It's made up of plants from fiber from 5 different plants that have been merged together in the matrix. Okay, so it packs a punch in terms of the amount of fiber that it has. So I know that fiber is going to decrease my glycemic index, and the way fiber does that, fiber slows down the transit of food through the colon. If food is supposed to move through the colon by this speed, fiber causes food to move through the colon by this speed. Slow movement of food through the colon translates to slow absorption. Slow absorption translates to slow release of glucose into the blood. The opposite is true. Fast movement of food through the colon translates to fast absorption and fast release of glucose into the blood. So if you and I went to an Italian restaurant to eat lasagna, and I knew a thing or two about fiber, and you did not know a thing or two about fiber, and you ordered your lasagna and you ate your lasagna, this is what your blood, without the fiber product, this is what your blood sugar is going to do. Your blood sugar will do that, and that will be maybe a blood sugar 180. But me, I'm lucky. I know a thing or two about the balance. I know it's saturated with fiber. I know it's going to decrease my glycemic index because it's going to slow the transit of food through the colon. What I do is I eat the same plate of lasagna you ate, and after eating the same plate of lasagna you ate, my blood sugar is going to do this. That's going to be my glycemic index, and my blood sugar may be 90, whereas yours is 180, and we ate the same plate of lasagna. And now, why is that important? Because your blood sugar has gone to 180, your pancreas is going to produce a commensurate higher amount of insulin to deal with that blood sugar of 180. So for you, your pancreas may produce 20 units of insulin. For me, because I've only produced 90 units, my blood sugar has only gone up to 90, my pancreas is going to produce one-to-one relationship, guys. My pancreas is going to produce a commensurate lower amount of insulin to deal with that blood sugar of 90. So for me, my pancreas may produce a blood sugar of 5 units. Sorry, insulin 5 units. I want you to think of 20 units as high insulin and 5 units as low insulin. 20 units as a tyrant CEO and 5 units as a humble CEO. When insulin is tyrannical, running high, the cells have less respect for it. It pushes you towards insulin resistance. It makes the cell less likely to open its doors. When insulin is running low, it's the opposite. A humble insulin, the cell say, I can work with that guy. He's a humble guy. That is the implications of fiber in our diet. And that's how fiber helps in reversing insulin resistance. The last thing is that fiber helps in reversing dysbiosis. Remember, fiber is the chow for the microbiome, is the food for the microbiome. Every living organism, a lion in the jungle of Cameroon, where I'm from, to a bacteria in the gut, all require nutrients. And the nutrients for the microbiome is fiber. When there is sufficient food and there isn't shortage, there is no need for survival of the fittest. There's enough food to go around for everybody. The bad bacteria have no incentive to hoard food, and fiber does that. But again, remember, unfortunately, we're consuming 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day, and less than the required amount, which is causing all those symptoms that we are now facing today. So that's how these two nutraceutical products do this. You see, guys, our ancestors did not need things like this because their foods were 100% natural. This company that makes these products has gone back and said, can we replicate what our ancestors used to do? Our ancestors ate foods that were high in fiber. Can we replicate that to reverse our disease conditions? Our ancestors also did something that we don't do today. They ate less. They ate less calories. Can we replicate that by using this product, which can help you to fast so that you eat less calories and at the same time, causing you to burn the calories that has resulted in insulin resistance. So that's what those two products do. And I end by saying this should be good news to you. If you're listening to this and you suffer from a chronic medical condition, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, all those things, if your ancestor 100 years ago were to drop in, right now and see that we're suffering from these diseases, they'll be in shock. They wouldn't know what to make of that. But we could reclaim our health and become like our ancestors by just reversing the dysbiosis and the insulin resistance that cause the energy deficiency. And the Feel Great system is a wonderful solution. And as a physician, I was impressed to hear that this system, this nutraceutical product, is listed in the physician's desk reference. If you pull up the PDL, you're going to find these two products. So it should be good news to you if you suffer from any chronic medical condition. You don't have to be sentenced to diabetes. You don't have to be sentenced to being overweight. You don't have to be sentenced to fatty liver, to PCOS. You name it, there is hope. And the Feel Great system offers you that hope to reclaim your health again. So thank you guys very much for listening. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's see. Unfortunately, I cannot stay with you guys longer than this. Um, I have a commitment, and so I'm going to let Dr. Kenny and Amory moderate from here and take questions and what have you. But thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Dieter.
All right, thank you.
All right. Keith, where are you at? I'd like to have you, if you could, share. So I'm just going to have a couple people share some testimonies. Spotlight. Let me see here. How's that look? There you go. So Keith, what was your life like beforehand? What's it been like ever since, man?
Well, 25-year diabetic on insulin 95% of that time. Varying areas of health. I had in 2018, I got diagnosed with a autoimmune disorder, was then plagued with diabetic wounds that wouldn't heal. In fact, one of these came to a head this January when it literally took my life. They were able to bring me back, obviously, but there was certain things like during that process, my kidneys had shut down, my blood sugar was in the 600s, and
Can you guys mute, please? Whoever.
I got it.
Thank you.
And in saying that, I don't have the pictures. I have them on my iPad, which I'm talking to you on. I had a foot wound that literally killed me. I got it middle of last November, and in January this year, it took my life. That is the wound at its worst. They found it in January of middle of second week in December of last year, and then January 15th of this year, it literally took my life. and they took it on. It took my life on my daughter's gender reveal party to find out I was fixing to be a grandfather. Um, and since June 3rd, when he was born, I started the protocol 4 days later. And well, actually about 9 days later, by the time I got it, it was June 12th when I started it. There's the healed, what my foot looks like now, where that big gaping hole is. I mean, you can kind of see a little bit of an indent, but other than that, no side effects. I was in hyperbaric chamber for 2 months, to the tune of $180,000. My foot doctor has finally felt a pulse in my feet that he hasn't felt in a really long time. He was telling me I'm a walking billboard at the way I've turned my life around. And so fast forward to June of this year, I started the protocol on the 12th of June, and within the first 30 to 60 days, I was down 50 pounds, and I had healing that I couldn't explain other than taking the protocol. And on day 90, um, I was down over 65 pounds. I had lost 10 and a half inches on my waist. I was on 15 meds a day prior to taking the protocol. On day 2, I was off 108 units of insulin a day, 6 shots all day long. I was getting injections in my eyes for bleeding retinas every other month, one in both eyes. And whoever tells you that doesn't hurt, I'm here to tell you it does hurt. Um, but
How's your
at the
eyesight?
end of
Keith?
my eyesight has actually improved. My eye doctor was amazed. The back of my eyes used to look like a jagged rock face, and now they're smooth as glass. Now I barely even wear my glasses. I don't really need to. I think I'm at 20/30
Wow.
last a month ago when he checked.
What were you before? Do you remember?
Oh God. Well, I couldn't see farther than about 10 feet away from me.
Wow.
I was having trouble driving without my glasses. I almost couldn't. Um, and yeah, it was not a fun time for sure. But I'm off 15 meds a day. I don't take any meds. And I was on metformin, nerve blockers for the neuropathy. That's all gone away. I was on statins, cholesterol meds, you name it, I was on it. And I no longer take any meds at all. And my cardiologist is amazed. I'm finally off the last of my holdout meds, which was the blood pressure. It's now normal. All my labs are normal. I've never felt more energy. Um, I've never felt more clear and focused. And it has truly been life altering. I was in a pretty dark place, as I've told Dr. Kenny on multiple times. I didn't think I'd be here in 2 years. And I now have outlook for the future. I plan on living quite a bit more long time, and I'm going to make sure my grandson knows who I am, other than just, well, here he is. Here's a nice picture of him. He's going to get to actually know me for many years to come.
God bless that grandchild.
Yes, sir.
I love it, man. Thank you, brother.
You are
You know,
very welcome.
Oh man, so wonderful. And then George, here's another one. And so I always find George's story quite interesting as well. So George, I'm gonna see if I can spotlight you, brother. There we go.
Hey Keith, I'm so glad you're around too, buddy. But I can tell you, I've been a chronic yo-yo dieter for as long as I can remember, which led me down a path of diabetes without me even knowing it. I had an HbA1c of 18.1 and a fasting blood glucose of 834. I should be dead.
That was at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. You fasted.
2 in the
that.
afternoon, 20 hours of fasting, because I'm smart. I know if I wait longer, I can get my A1. Yeah, 2 in the afternoon, 20-hour fast. I cannot even imagine. The scary thing is that I cannot even begin to fathom what my normal numbers were for weeks and months on end. God's kept me around, just like you. And Doc, I mean, to be able to share this message with others, because in 107 days, I was able to drop my A1C from 18.1 to 7.2, and from 834 fasting glucose to 90. And on symptoms, I did a chart. I charted it out. There's 68 things on here. I hit 58 of them. And that's not something to be proud of. I had no idea. No one ever told me these things. Then I've been blessed, and I've gone from, I've been able to, most people talk about losing weight. At 73, I've added 9 pounds. I have lean muscle mass, now 30% with body fat of 18.9, and lost 14 inches on my waist. So yeah.
Yeah, you added 9 pounds, right? And it lost 4, because they get everybody to focus on like how much they weigh. And so, George, you're 73. You're not supposed to gain muscle.
Nope.
You've added muscle. You've lost inches.
And all no meds. No, I took no medication, no medical intervention of any kind. I truly believe that food got me into this mess, and food will get me out. And that's really on this natural protocol. That's it. Absolutely 100%.
Man, brother, here I want to share a couple other pictures. George, thank you. You stick around too. Somebody might have a question for both of you, but this I want to show just a couple of pictures, right? So I had in this photo every sign of insulin resistance. This was me in February of 2024. I had skin tags, belly fat, my blood pressure is going up, high cholesterol, lower testosterone, everything hurt. I was peeing all day. I had no clue. Look how old I looked, right? Insulin makes you age. This was me in the hospital for nearly 2 months. I get out of the hospital. Amory introduced me to this. I went from this left picture to the right in 35 days. My sleep apnea is gone. My fatty liver is gone. My cardiac AFib is gone. I don't even know how much weight I've lost. It was over 50. I don't know. I'm gaining muscle, getting stronger. There's Keith's foot. Look at this husband and wife. This is how they were going into, right, old age, as they would like you to believe, and this is them now. Now, this right here is a friend of mine, John, and John lives down in Texas, and John, I met through this. This was John over here. He's 67 years young. Hypertensive, both numbers triple digits. Okay. Sleep apnea, waking up the neighbors. He had non-alcoholic fatty liver, had never drank alcohol in his life. He said, "You're doing this talk. Everything I hear you say, I've got." This is him in 6 weeks. He's down 67 pounds, no longer on blood pressure meds. Blood pressure's back normal. Sleep apnea is gone. Completely got his life back. This is Dr. Dieter. So maybe you guys, think, well, just why not fast? And that's a very valid question, right? This was Dr. Dieter using the standard American diet. He actually laughed about it. Look how unhealthy I was. His humor is so funny. This was him when he found the power of fasting. Obviously, amazing difference, right? He was running 3 times a week. This was between 5 and 6 years in between. The picture here on the right is him with 2 months on this protocol, all natural protocol he just shared, just adding tea and fiber. This is my friend Colleen. That is 1 year. She was on 5 medications. She's on a quarter of a thyroid medication. She reversed her type 2. Skin tags fell off like crazy. That's another sign of insulin resistance. When you reverse insulin resistance, skin tags tend to shrink and fall off. And if you've had any of those kind of things go away, feel free to put it in the chat. But this is my friend Colleen now. She's happy Colleen again. This is our friend Deb. Deb went from a size 12 to a size 4. She had severe insulin resistance. She had gut dysbiosis. She had low testosterone. She had headaches. She also developed allergies, that's gut dysbiosis, and IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. This was all gone by reversing her insulin resistance and feeding the gut, fixing the gut, detoxing liver. Her IBS is gone. Her sleep, or excuse me, her IBS, her allergies, her headaches, and her testosterone issues all back to normal. This is our friend Angelita. Look at the picture of her legs. This is her. She's a nurse practitioner. Okay. And she was on 6 medications per day for 10 years. 5 of those were for IBS and GERD. 1 was for antidepressants. Do you remember Dr. Dieter alluding to serotonin is produced in your gut? That's why they call those drugs SSRIs, right? Serotonin selective reuptake inhibitors. In 2 weeks, Angelita was off all those medications. This is Angelita today. Her husband is a pharmacist that actually does the same protocol. These are low energy drinks. This is the tea. Look at that, low energy. This is on the package in Canada, just so you guys know that. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm gonna stop sharing. We've got a few minutes to answer questions people may have. Anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, raise your hand or reach out. And with this, by the way, Jennifer put in there, she's offering anxiety meds, statins. I mean, we see this all day, every day. These are plants. And when I asked Dr. Dieter, I said, Dr. Dieter, why would you share this with people? He said, well, these are listed in the PDR.net, which is where he as a physician would recommend drugs. You can also see on the back here, that right there, this code lets you know these are third-party tested for herbicides, pesticides, mold, mildew, bacteria, carcinogens. That means cancer-causing agents. And they're as effective as diabetic meds, weight loss meds, blood pressure and cholesterol meds. How many of you know 10 people right now in your family struggling with these things? And so these come with a 90-day money-back guarantee. The company just came out with a fasting app. So you get to track your progress and how you're eating and what you're doing. And people that track things get even better progress. And when you track 50% of that journey, you have a 90-day money-back guarantee. That was another thing he said. He said, I've never seen a drug that does this, and I've never seen a drug with a 90-day money-back guarantee. And the one side effect, you're going to have to get a new wardrobe. So as long as you're okay with that, that's the side effect. If you have any questions, great. If not, when you see this, you're going to think of family and friends that need this protocol. And I don't have any symptoms now. I have 0 issues, but just like changing oil in my car, brushing my teeth every day, this keeps my blood work pristine. It keeps the inside of my vessels working the best as possible so I can be the best version of myself. And so if you're looking for that, that's what we do as well. This right here is sustainable. It's simple, easiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And when you do this, our company not only provides you with a bottle, but what they also do, your family and friends are going to ask you what you're doing. You're going to get your own discount code. Take that code and share that with those family and friends when they ask what you're doing. Share it with them before they even ask you. And when they do this, you get a $10 coupon each time that they order as our company's way of saying thank you. Oh, this isn't about weight loss, Mary, but great question. That's why we bring up George actually gained 9 pounds. It has nothing to do with weight loss. If your body needs to lose weight, you will. Here's how the name of the game works. Everyone basically is insulin resistant because of how we've lived. And when you're insulin resistant, you can't burn fat for fuel. You've seen these people, they're very thin, arms, legs, they have no muscle, but they have just a little pooch, right? You have visceral fat. And when you're eating, you're continuously dumping more sugar into the liver. Research shows medically, when you start fasting in just a matter of up to about 4 days, you drop almost 40% of the fat out of your liver just by doing that. So what people do is they burn visceral fat. How many of you on here have been doing this protocol and you've actually added muscle? Feel free to put that in the chat. And the reason is when you're fasting, you increase human growth hormone and testosterone, both which build muscle. So it has nothing to do with weight loss. If you need to lose weight, you will lose weight. If you need to gain muscle, your body will do that. I hope that helped. Great question, though. The protocol, you wake up and sip the tea.
Hello.
This creates natural GLP-1 by up to 70% proven at BYU. So this helps you go without snacking and keeps your blood sugar low. Now remember this, when blood sugar's low, insulin's low. When insulin's low, fat's got to go, okay? And so insulin tells your body to store fat. So if you're eating every hour to two, you're telling the body there's fuel, let's store it. Let's grow tissue. When you keep it low, you burn fat for fuel. This is what keeps blood sugar and insulin levels low. When you eat, your largest meal is when you take the fiber. In all transparency, I usually eat 2 meals a day. I buy extra fiber and I take a fiber every time I eat. That's the
Hello?
protocol. When you eat, use the fiber. Yes, ma'am. Somebody said something, I think.
Hello?
Yes.
And how do I get the product?
Whoever brought you to the call, thank you for asking. They have a discount code that they can share with you.
Okay.
Okay, and they'll be happy to get that to you. You're going to save through the discount. Here's one thing I always explain to people. You can use FSAs and HSAs cards to pay for this as well, but you have to do one-time purchases. Now, do you remember me saying there's a 90-day money-back guarantee?
Yes.
So what happens is most people will order 3 months at a time through one of those. They don't have to order every month. If you want to save the most money, I always recommend people subscribe. When they subscribe, they still get that 90-day money-back guarantee. The company gives you $10 off each time that you order, and they pay shipping and handling. So you save about $25 each month by subscribing. And you can cancel at any time. Great question, though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Mary, absolutely. If you want to reach out to the person, they can help you with that too, that brought you to the call. Anyone else? You guys have some great questions. Man, Claudia, no migraines, energy levels high. Craving. I know that was the biggest thing for me. I couldn't be around. I'm a pizzaholic. I thought like eating whole food was eating the whole pizza. Once I'd have a bite, I had to eat the whole thing. I sip this stuff and it's like freaking willpower in a packet. It's crazy. Oh my gosh, Claudia, I didn't realize you're off your thyroid meds. That's amazing. Oh. Vic, the product, if you subscribe, it's $159 per month. It's about $5 a day. It's less than a cup of coffee at like Starbucks. And you're not eating breakfast. So you're putting that money right back in your pocket and it pays for the protocol. I'm actually saving a lot of money. I mean, most people I would probably assume if you're saving money using this, feel free to put a dollar sign in the chat. Oh my gosh, Claudia, that's amazing. You went from 200s to 90s. Wow. So her father-in-law's blood sugar glucose went from 200s to 90s. So we see this all day long, man. It's been the funnest thing I've ever done in my life. I've never been able to honestly impact so many people's lives as I have with this protocol. It's been truly, truly a blessing. Oh man, Keith, I didn't know that, brother. That's awesome. I love this. That's why we do these calls even on a Friday night. It's freaking nuts. Anyone else? And Mary, if whoever brought you in, to the call, just reach out to them and they can answer questions and help you in any way that you may have. You're so welcome. Mhm. Yeah, the oldest person I know that's using the protocol is 102. The youngest that I know, like kids do this too. My little girl does this. People ask that, I forgot to tell you. So my little girl is 12, and children do not fast, and pregnant moms do not fast. Okay, but they use the products, and my little girl's standardized test scores have doubled. I mean, we've got kids 2 and 3 and 1 sipping on the tea. So Kate, that's a great. Every human being is different. I mean, Keith was on 108 units of insulin. He was off it in 2 days. My brother was on insulin for 20 years. He was off it day one. Me personally, I was on it for 2 hours and I had tremendous energy and I was peeing like a racehorse, which let me know that I was dumping sugar. So everybody's a little bit different, to be honest with you. Some people might a little bit slower, but people usually start to notice like an increase in mental clarity real quick, a reduction in joint pain, a reduction in brain fog. You'll start to see tapering of clothing, like because your body composition is changing. Anybody else? Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Dr. Dieter will be doing this again Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So, whomever, if you know people that this makes sense to, right? Bring them. It's going to be the same link. Feel free to bring them back, right? The duration, Vic, you can do it forever. I will. Not everybody does, but I save money. I feel amazing. My blood work's incredible. I've never felt better, and I like to feel great. So I'll do it forever. I've had people who stopped. I mean, I have a lady, her name was Bessie, and I'll show you, this is crazy. This lady, I'll never forget, I'll show you guys a quick picture and then we'll roll. But this beautiful lady, she lives out in California, and she said to me, she goes, she was on the product. She lost like 38 pounds in less than 3 months. And it was so funny. She reaches out to me. She goes, I'm gaining weight again. And I'm like, well, oh, aren't you on the product? She goes, no, I quit. This was her in less than 3 months. And her depression went away. And I said, well, were you depressed and weren't you losing weight before when you were on the protocol? She said, yeah. I said, were you depressed? She goes, no, I felt great. I said, well, if you felt great doing it, why? She goes, oh, I didn't even think about that. And
Hello?
so it's like if you stopped going to the gym or you quit eating the way you were eating, what would happen? So those are the questions I always ask people. So it's not something you have to do. It's sustainable. It's simple. It's food. So sorry, I'm not sure who that is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed night. Thank you so much for hopping on. Plan on seeing you guys later. If you have any questions, get back with the person that brought you here. If you're interested in what we're doing and getting the word out, get with that person who brought you on here too. They have a link for that. They have also a
Hello?
link simply for the product. So thank you guys so much.
Dr. Ken, hold on. Sorry. There's a
Hello?
question on Ozempic and Mounjaro. Please, did you address that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. These are plants, so you can do this with any medication. I've actually had people on 37 medications use the protocol. 37 a day, not a week, a day, using the protocol. So when I started the protocol, I was on blood thinners. I just got out of the hospital. I was on high blood pressure meds, antibiotics, and some other, I don't even remember. I was off my blood pressure meds in day one. Probably a few weeks. I think I was off everything. So yes, we have people all day long doing this with Ozempic, Wegovy. That's synthetic GLP-1. This creates your own GLP-1. 2 products, Legrand. It's 2 teas per day and 1 fiber per day. You drink the tea when you're not eating, and you use the fiber when you eat your biggest meal. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a blessed night. You are so welcome. Whoever brought you to this call, if you're interested, you've got nothing to lose. Bring people with you to the call on Sunday. People need to hear this, guys. You never know the lives you're going to touch. Thank you guys so much. Have a blessed day.